Tonight, under fire in a deadly attack.
You could hear screams, and then we heard gunshots again, and as we looked along the bridge, because we were only crawling along the bridge, there was bodies.
How an armed suspect managed to breach the grounds of the UK Parliament. Medical errors, warnings, and suspensions. New details emerge about accused serial killer and former nurse Elizabeth Wettlaufer. Plus, a new federal budget.
As we create the jobs of tomorrow, we'll support a culture of lifelong learning.
And some new money.
Their flexibility is fairly limited.
What families and businesses may like, what they may not. It's now 10 o'clock in London, England, a country in shock and mourning after a deadly and dramatic attack outside the Parliament buildings. A major security operation is underway after a terrorist incident that began 7 hours ago. Police are now confirming 3 people are dead, including a police officer. The suspected attacker also killed. 20 others are injured. The incident sent people scrambling for cover outside the Parliament buildings as an attacker drove into pedestrians, then ran into the Parliament building where he repeatedly stabbed a police officer. The suspect was then shot dead by police. Good evening. The deadly rampage unfolded within sight of some of the city's most famous tourist sites. People watched as police and medical crews went to work trying to capture the attacker and treat people on the ground. CTV's Rosie Del Campo is here with a look at what happened today. Rosie, the threat level for international terrorism in the UK was already listed as severe.
And that means an attack is highly likely, Megan. In this case, lawmakers, lords, and visitors, they were locked down in an incident witnesses describe as absolutely horrendous. People scramble for cover outside the British Parliament building as gunshots ring out. Those gunshots bringing to an end a deadly series of events that police believe were carried out by one person. And it all began on the Westminster Bridge, where an attacker ran over several pedestrians.
I think it was a lady. I'm not 100% sure, but underneath the wheel, you could hear screams, and then we heard gunshots again.
At least 2 people were killed, and several others were hurt and treated on scene.
There was bodies, literally.
Must have been about 10
At least
bodies.
10,
yeah,
12 bodies,
shot,
all in different
just lying
places.
in different places along the bridge.
Being shot, yeah.
It must have been terrifying.
It was horrendous,
Yeah.
absolutely horrendous.
The attacker drove to the Parliament building, crashed into the gate, and managed to breach the grounds.
This House is now suspended, but please wait here.
Inside, British MPs were stuck while it was on lockdown. One of them posted a video message online.
I just want to say all of our thoughts are with the people who've been injured in this attack outside Parliament on Westminster Bridge. And our hearts go out to them and to their families at this really, really difficult time.
Outside, just meters away, a police officer was stabbed to death. The suspect shot dead by police. While this was happening on the ground, tourists were watching from above, stuck on the famous London Eye.
We could see that something was going on the bridge. That's how we knew something was going on. And then more cops started coming, more sirens, and so I knew something big happened.
We saw ambulances and emergency crews caring for people in several spots along the bridge.
They're now among dozens being interviewed by police. Says there is no reason to adjust the threat level in Canada. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, interim Conservative leader Rona Ambrose, and NDP leader Tom Mulcair have offered their condolences to the victims' families. Megan.
All right, thanks very much, Rosie. Well, the United Kingdom is one of the most popular destinations for Canadians leaving this country and vice versa. Right now, more than 80,000 people living in the UK were actually born here. Those strong ties between countries date back to Canada's Confederation. CTV's Mark Venema joins us now with more local reaction. Mark, you spoke with one Cambridge resident who's in London right now.
And Megan, he was actually at the site of the attack just yesterday. He is fine, but says he is a little nervous about the potential for even more violence. 24 hours ago, Andrew Sheeto stood in this exact location.
It's kind of scary that it kind of happened this close.
There on business, the Cambridge resident took advantage of his day off to do some sightseeing.
I took some pictures of the exact spot that the shooting took place, and it was literally 24 hours before it actually happened.
This morning, he headed a few hours out of town for work. He returned to a much different scene.
The traffic's crazy down there. Everything's in lockdown over there. I heard, too, that the people that were on the Eye, the London Eye, were stuck on the London Eye for about 2 hours.
Another local resident watching closely is Chris Hodgson, who owns this British store in Shakespeare. He's seen here speaking with us last June.
It pulls at your heartstrings that can go on, and the tragedy.
This morning, while on vacation in Western Canada, he got the terrible news that his homeland was under attack.
We went there for 3 years in a row and did the London Eye and walked around Westminster across that bridge 3 times in 3 years. So you really feel it, and it's very disturbing.
Canadians vacationing there are now wondering if it's safe to take in the sights and the sounds of London.
I don't think I'm going to be a part of a terrorist attack, but like I said, when it happens this close to where I was, and it just so happens when I was here in London, just right where I was a day ago, it is a little disturbing.
And Wilfrid Laurier University says they have 16 students on exchange in the UK right now. However, none of them are in London. We've also reached out to all other local school boards who say they're not aware of any students or staff being in that area. Megan.
All right, Mark Venema reporting tonight. Thanks, Mark. And today marks exactly 1 year since the attacks on the Brussels airport and subway system. Airport staff, security, and rescue personnel looked on as King Philip laid a wreath outside the departure hall of the airport, where 16 people lost their lives. Commemorations also took place at the subway station, where another 16 people were killed. Belgium has remained on its second highest alert level since the bombings last year. Turning now to a gruesome discovery in Goderich. Provincial police say human remains were discovered yesterday when a homeowner was having construction work done in their backyard. Investigators say a partial human skull was found in some excavated soil at a property on St. George's Crescent. Officials say they're in the early stages of the investigation. No other information is available at this time. The Ontario man accused of killing his 7-year-old stepson and stabbing a bank employee made his first court appearance today. Justin Kyer was arrested in Kenora around 6 o'clock last night, ending an extensive Canada-wide manhunt. CTV's Lena Latifa joins us with the details tonight. Lena, all eyes on what happens next with Kyer.
Megan, a press conference from Niagara Regional Police today thanking the public and stating the community is safer now that Kyer is in custody. But there is still lots to learn about his alleged crimes and what unfolded before his 7-year-old stepson was found seriously hurt.
He's the man everyone's been looking for. In an orange jumpsuit, 43-year-old Justin Kyer seen heading to his first court appearance since his arrest.
There's a great relief, and there was also a great, obviously some spirit of fear during the time that he was not in custody.
On the run for 5 days, prompting a frantic nationwide search. He's accused of killing his stepson Nathan Dumas in St. Catharines.
These are not easy cases, and truth of the matter is, I've said many times before, we're all humans before we became cops, and we got kids. I got grandkids.
It all ended in Kenora, about 2,000 kilometers away from the crime scene. Kyer was found in this Walmart parking lot. A tip from a citizen helped OPP find him inside the 2009 Pontiac Montana van police had described earlier.
I could hear him yelling, "Don't move your hands, don't move your hands." I had no idea what was going on, honestly.
Kyer now facing a charge of first-degree murder in the death of his stepson. He's also charged in the attempted murder of a local RBC employee. She's now in stable condition. Throughout, community members have continued to leave behind tokens of love. for the little boy.
Didn't even have a chance to celebrate his 8th birthday. It's so sad.
Niagara Regional Police thanking the public, media, and law enforcement.
The RBC victim and the mother are both elated, obviously, at the news of the arrest.
7-year-old Nathan's family is planning for his funeral tomorrow in nearby Thorold.
Here's what we also know about Kyer. He and his girlfriend, Nathan's mother, were in the process of splitting up, and police say the bank employee knew Kyer and worked with him on financial matters in the past. Megan.
A tragic story. Thanks, Lena. Startling new details have emerged about Elizabeth Wetlaufer, the former nurse accused of killing 8 seniors. This week, the courts released a new version of a search warrant outlining Wetlaufer had a history of medical errors, warnings, and suspensions. CTV's Nicole Lampa is in our newsroom tonight. Pardon me, she is outside tonight. Nicole, how many times was Wetlaufer suspended?
Well, Megan, at the Woodstock nursing home, where police say she killed 7 out of 8 victims, the court documents show that she was suspended 4 times for medical-related mistakes before she was fired, which outrages the son of an alleged victim who died months later.
Before Wetlaufer was accused of murder, she had a work history of allegedly putting patients' lives in danger. But despite warnings revealed in court documents, Wetlaufer was allowed to continue working as a nurse. Arpad Horvath is the last alleged victim. His son says the new information is upsetting.
It's just an unending nightmare. Every time you think that you know all, you're starting to know the answer. The things just change. The question changes. The scenery changes.
According to court documents, Wetlaufer was fired from Crescent Care in Woodstock nearly 2 years ago for failing to follow insulin protocol. The search warrant also includes parts of Wetlaufer's dismissal letter saying she gave a patient wrong medicine. It says, quote, "This is another incident in a pattern of behaviors that are placing residents at risk. You have an extensive disciplinary record for medication-related errors, which includes numerous warnings, as well as 1, 3, and 2 5-day suspensions. You are terminated immediately." Months later, Wetlaufer got a job at Meadow Park in London, where Arpad Horvath was living. The documents show Wetlaufer was the nurse taking care of Horvath the 4 times he was found with low blood sugar. In the last incident, Horvath was found unresponsive, cold, and clammy. He died days later.
It gives me a better perspective, but it just gives me more pain.
Wetlaufer also worked at Telford Place in Paris. The court papers say in April last year, she was asked not to return because of her behavior towards other staff. And then in August, she quit the nursing agency she worked at and stated in an email she can no longer function as a nurse.
Now, the court documents say that Wetlaufer checked herself in at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health a month later. Her next court date is on April 7th. Megan.
All right, thanks very much, Nicole. Well, now to the federal budget. It was tabled this afternoon about half an hour late because of political wrangling in the House of Commons. When it was unveiled, there was disappointment. There's no new defense spending, no changes to capital gains, and you'll pay more for tobacco and alcohol. Even your Uber ride will be more expensive. CTV's Omar Sajidina has the details.
It's about building the middle class.
With the Liberals already running higher than promised deficits, no huge spending spree in this budget. Rather, a clearer picture of how the government is allocating money it previously announced.
Now, we realize that there's much more hard work in front of us than behind us.
Most of the new money the government is committing to will go to skills, innovation, and middle-class jobs.
I think on the one hand, they want to make significant investments in skill training and innovation. On the other hand, they have to watch the deficit that they've already got. So it means that their flexibility is fairly limited.
Almost $500 million this year, increasing to more than $1 billion by 2022. Expected to make an additional 10,000 part-time students per year eligible for Canada student grants and loans, and making it easier for students with dependents, as well as adults returning to school, to apply for those grants and loans. The government is also detailing how it will spend the money from its Social Infrastructure Fund. $11 billion over 11 years for affordable housing, $7 billion over 10 years for subsidized childcare. And there will be changes, a so-called Uber tax, the government says, to ensure that ride-sharing businesses are subject to the same GST-HST rules as taxis.
What we've done is say that there's a level playing field. If you're in an Uber or if you're in a taxi, you pay GST.
Ottawa is also eliminating the public transit tax credit as of June 30th and increasing excise duty on alcohol by 2% effective tomorrow. And Canada's savings bonds, which started in 1946, are being discontinued this year. Low interest rates making them unpopular.
This is a modest budget, and I think it may be modest in part because the government is facing a very uncertain economic outlook, particularly given the risks associated with the new Trump administration.
The deficit this year is projected to be $28.5 billion, which includes a $3 billion contingency fund, decreasing to almost $19 billion by 2022. However, the debt that year will go up.
Canadians are paying way too much tax already. The federal government does not have a revenue problem. They clearly have a spending problem.
The rich are getting what they want. Ordinary Canadians are not getting what they need.
And the government has no timeline of when it will balance the books. Still, the debt to GDP ratio, the government's fiscal anchor, is trending down, an indication it says it's spending responsibly. Omar Sachedina, CTV News, Ottawa.
Well, as we just heard, Ottawa is moving to eliminate a 15% tax credit for commuters who buy a transit pass. Ontario Finance Minister Charles Sousa was asked whether he might follow suit provincially. Here's what he had to say.
We're not going to do anything that's going to prevent or inhibit the use of public transit. We'll take whatever steps necessary to actually encourage more.
Well, new money for high-tech startups and a new program to connect startups and venture capital are part of the federal budget as well. And this is likely piquing a few ears here in Waterloo Region's tech sector. CTV's Max Wark is in Kitchener with more on this. Max.
Megan, venture capital is typically cash from an investor in exchange for part of a company. And it's quite the process getting a startup off the ground. Securing venture capital is a lot like dating.
I guess in a way, yeah. Elevator pitch is sort of like flirting.
You're bound to get rejected a few times before you find your match.
It definitely can be emotionally taxing. There's a lot of times that you'll be really interested in a specific VC or a specific angel investor or anything like that, and then it just, for whatever reason, falls through.
The analogy works well for Kalia Baker's startup, an online bridesmaid gown rental store. She's looking for $350,000 to help grow her company.
As it is growing in Canada, the whole VC world, it's still not at the level where it is as attainable as it should be.
Over the last 6 years in Waterloo Region, the number of startups and venture capital is increasing. Last year, local companies raised $340 million. But still, that's not enough.
We're still a fair ways away from having too much venture capital in the region right now.
Venture capital is typically used to hire, and staffing is also in short supply. So now local tech companies are looking south to bring talent back to Canada.
A lot of people left Canada a number of years ago, always with the intention of coming home. And what we're trying to do is send a message to them saying, hey, things have changed significantly.
Local online equipment rental company Dozer just raised $2.5 million.
It's given us that push to be able to move into new markets. We've launched in the United States since we've received that funding.
So an influx of more cash for startups from the government, according to Dozer, is needed and welcome.
They're going to need more funding to be able to hire the team and bring in the additional resources they need to actually see that through.
Now, in terms of actual cash, the federal government is promising $400 million over the next 3 years for large-scale startups, so essentially bigger companies. The tech industry says it's a start. Megan.
All right, thanks very much, Max. Well, he says his daughter fell on a hypodermic needle. Still to come on CTV News, what a Cambridge father says she's had to go through and why it should never have happened. Plus, uncertain future. Sears says there's substantial doubt the company can stay in business.
I'm Abigail Beeman at the University of Waterloo, where students are trying to process the difficult news of 2 deaths this term. The changes they're calling for are coming up after the break.
Well, it will be another chilly start to the day tomorrow, but our temperature is going to rise after that. In fact, I'll show you how far above seasonal we will be by the end of this week, coming up.
University of Waterloo students are calling for better mental health supports after another student died on campus. It's the second suicide this term alone, but the school isn't releasing any details. CTV's Abigail Beeman is on campus tonight. Abigail, the deaths are having a big impact.
Megan, the school is being criticized for a lack of action by students who had trouble accessing services, faculty, and someone who says he's the victim's brother.
At this residence in January, the hazmat unit responded to a student suicide involving chemicals. Julie Nguyen says it affected her so badly, she tried to see an on-campus counselor right away.
I got an email last week in March saying that they might have an appointment for me. So in the 2 months that they didn't come see me.
Now she's worried more students will have to wait for help after a second suicide. On Monday, a 19-year-old male student was found dead outside the same building.
It's been a bit of a tough term for us on campus here. We've had a few students die, and there are a variety of reasons that students die.
UW isn't releasing details but says it's supporting students. A Reddit post by someone claiming to be the victim's brother says Chase wasn't supported at all. It reads in part, "The fact that my brother was reduced to a number and was mistreated by the entire structure of the Waterloo campus is sickening." He says the school never even gave us the courtesy of a phone call about the death.
We have a protocol and a process that we follow anytime a student passes away. And that includes, as a very important and first priority, being in touch with the family.
Students we spoke with want a bigger conversation about mental health. They wish their school would say more about what's been going on, but more importantly, they say they wish UW would do more.
2 in 1 term is too many. Nikki St. Clair launched a petition calling on the school to change its approach to mental health.
There's a really high importance put on doing well academically and maybe not so much taking care of yourself.
The petition already has close to 5,000 signatures, including Associate Professor Amy Morrison's. She says it's unacceptable that faculty haven't received any information.
I teach some of the kids who are classmates of this student, and no one around them in an official capacity is acknowledging their loss or acknowledging that something traumatic has happened.
Morrison says silence speaks loudly about UW's discomfort around these tough issues.
The university insists there are plenty of supports for students, but it hasn't brought in any extra staff or added hours in the light of this most recent death. We have posted a link to the school's health and wellness website on our site. Megan.
All right, Abigail Beeman reporting on campus tonight. Thanks, Abigail. A Cambridge father says he's furious. His 7-year-old daughter fell on a used needle while playing near a Waterloo park. Mike Beaumont says his daughter is now taking medication, something he says no child should have to endure. CTV's Tyler Calver is following this story for us tonight. Tyler.
Megan, according to Mike Beaumont, his daughter was playing alongside this trail near Hillside Park when she accidentally fell onto a hypodermic needle.
And I heard my daughter scream, and I looked back, and she had a syringe jabbed into her leg.
Mike Beaumont says his family is traumatized. His 7-year-old daughter, Maya, is now taking daily medication, an antiretroviral cocktail to prevent HIV and hepatitis B, after she came in contact with an improperly disposed needle.
She has to be on a medicine for hepatitis B. She had to get needles for hep C. She's on a HIV/AIDS medicine. This one here is the HIV meds.
According to Beaumont, his daughter fell on the needle on March 12th while their family was walking along this trail near Hillside Park in Waterloo. Mike Beaumont says he feels there is too easy of access for people to get needles, but wonders why there isn't a better plan in place to dispose of those syringes after they're used.
So it's like the equipment's pretty much out there for the people to take their drugs. Well, the problem with that is, where's the cleanup crews?
If a needle is found on a municipal property, then they're encouraged to call their relevant bylaw office.
Waterloo Region Public Health says incidents like these are rare, but can have serious consequences.
The Harm Reduction Committee is looking at enhancing disposal options, and we do encourage people who use needles for whatever purpose to either return them to the pharmacy through needle exchange programs.
Beaumont says days after the incident, he found more evidence of intravenous drug use near his Cambridge home and believes more children could be at risk.
We shouldn't have to worry about this if your kid goes outside, if they're going to get infected or if they're going to die.
Public Health says the Beaumont family did the right thing by going straight to the emergency room to seek treatment. Maya will now have to undergo blood tests every 2 weeks for the next 2 months in order to see whether or not she contracted an infection. Megan.
Thanks, Tyler. Time for a break. Still to come on CTV News. They were warned, now they're suspended. What hundreds of high school students need to get done to get back into class. Time now to recap the top stories our news team is following online. 4 people are dead and at least 20 injured in London after a car plowed into pedestrians and an attacker stabbed a policeman. Police are calling the violence at the British Parliament a marauding terrorist attack. The dead included the assailant and the policeman he stabbed. The other 2 victims were among those hit by the car as it tore along Westminster Bridge before crashing. Justin Kyer, who's accused of killing his 7-year-old stepson in St. Catharines, has been arrested in Northern Ontario. Police say the 43-year-old man was nabbed in Kenora. Police say Kyer attacked young Nathan Dumas last Friday morning, causing undisclosed injuries that led to his death. They also allege Kyer stabbed a bank employee moments after the attack on Nathan. And a new federal budget has been tabled, and Canadians who drink, smoke, and rely on public transit will be paying more. The increase in taxes are effective Thursday. The Liberals are also eliminating the 15% tax credit for commuters who buy a transit pass. The government says the credit was ineffective in encouraging the use of public transit. Well, it's a silly event meant to draw attention to a serious situation. Full-grown men riding very tiny tricycles in support of mental health.
I'm always thrilled to see them pedaling like mad to be able to get this done.
Still to come on CTV News, how Ride, Don't Hide hopes to help by getting people talking. A police officer, a hockey player, and a city councillor got together in Waterloo today. They raced around Conestoga Mall as fast as they could on tiny tricycles, all for a good cause. CTV's Allison Tanner tells us more in this week's Local Hero.
On your mark, get set, go.
2 grown men, 2 tiny tricycles. It might have looked silly, but the attention they were getting was exactly what they wanted.
It's important that we ride, we don't hide, we get out there, we talk about it, we reduce stigma.
Waterloo City Councillor Jeff Henry, an OHL player, and a Waterloo Regional Police officer raced around Conestoga Mall, promoting the Ride Don't Hide, which takes place June 25th.
I'm always thrilled to see them pedaling like mad to be able to get this done.
1 in 5 Canadians experience a mental health condition at one point in their life.
Fred Wagner is the executive director of the Waterloo Wellington chapter. He says the ride is an important fundraiser because the more people talk, the more requests there are for help.
We run an intake service called Here 24/7 for 11 mental health and addictions agencies, and we get about 5,000 calls a month, which indicates how significant the need is for mental health services.
It's also a cause close to Garrett McFadden, the captain of the Guelph Storm hockey team.
When I was in grade 9, I lost a family friend due to suicide, so mental health has always been something that's important to me and my family.
As a result, the Kincardine native started McFadden's movement, helping to spread awareness around mental health among young athletes.
It's always been in my mind, so it's cool that I can do something to kind of make a difference.
Their dedication to making a difference and ending the stigma surrounding mental health makes the Ride Don't Hide volunteers this week's Local Heroes. Allison Tanner, CTV News.
We have an update on our top story now, the deadly terror attack in London, England. CTV's Rosie Del Campo is in our newsroom. Rosie.
Well, Megan, police in the UK now confirm 5 people are dead, including 1 officer, 3 civilians, and an attacker. And we now know about 40 others were hurt in what Prime Minister Theresa May is condemning as a sick and depraved terrorist attack. Extra armed officers will be on the streets in the next few days, and tonight at 11:30 we'll have more local reaction and hear from those traveling to and from London. Megan.